Good day, ma'ams and sirs. I am your facilitator for today. So, class, before I proceed into our formal discussion, I want you to guess this figure. So, what figure is this? Seems so hard, right? Another part. Another part again. Alan? Maybe. Yes. It is a land. A continent. So, what do you think? What continent is this? Yes, right. Our discussion for today is all about Africa. Their history, civilization, and literature. The rise of Africa's great civilization. Between 751 and 664 BC, the kingdom of Kush at the southern end of the Nile River gained strength and prominence, succeeding the new kingdom of Egyptian civilization. African literature is as old as the pyramids, for written literature on the African continent really began in the ancient Egyptians. But Egypt was not the only civilization in Africa. Suddenly, Egypt fell, losing much of its power. So, Kingdom of Kush gained strength, succeeding the Egyptian civilization, which means Kushitic king succeeded in conquering or ruling Egypt. Like Egyptians, Kingdom of Kush was ruled by royal families. But the difference is, Kush royal families trace their lineage through the female lines. So, more women ruled in the Kush than in any other civilization. Kushitic kingdom lived long and served as a major producer of iron. Faza of northern Sudan, whose deeds are recorded by the Soninka oral epic, the Dost. In addition to Kush, smaller civilization grew up around the edges of Sahara. One of them is the Faza of northern Sudan. This group farmed and raised livestock. They had a well-developed oral literary tradition and was famous by their Soninka oral epic, the Dost, which reached its present form in 16th century, but probably existed at least 3 centuries earlier. The Africa's Golden Age. Between AD 300 and AD 1600 marked the time when sculpture, music, metalwork, textiles, and oral literature flourished. This period includes the civilization of Actsum, the kingdom of Old Ghana, Old Mali, and Songhai. Also the city of Timbuktu and the Roman Empire. The Africa's Golden Age is the birth of several oral epics, including the Malian epic Sundiata, as well as the praise poems, fables, proverbs, and other forms of African oral literature. Actsum, 3rd century AD, a rich kingdom in eastern Africa arose in what is now Ethiopia. It served as a center of a trade route and developed its own writing system. So, the kingdom of Actsum is located in the northern part of Africa, and it is today occupied by the state of Ethiopia. Their economy before was based on agriculture, farming, cattle herding, and also as a center of trade routes, which gold and ivory were exchanged for foreign products or foods. And Actsum considered as the first sub-Saharan state to have its own coinage, which is the Aksumitic currency. And also their own writing system, which is the South Semitic language of Ethiopia, known as Ge'ez. So, Actsum had Christian communities before Muslims came. They developed their own unique Christian practices known as Coptic. Yes, Coptic Christians also believe in the Ten Commandments. They also practice baptism, confession, confirmation, but unlike Roman Catholics, they do not believe in the infallibility of the Pope or in purgatory. And also, Coptic priests can marry. So next, the Kingdom of Old Ghana, AD 300. Great civilization in Western Africa succeeded by the emperors of Old Mali and Songhai. So the Kingdom of Old Ghana is also known as the Land of Gold. Started after AD 300 and lasted for more than 800 years. They became rich from trading gold and salt. They used gold in making swords or weapons for wars, which helped them to stay in power. Then in 11th century, Ghana kings accepted Islam because their trading partners in the north were Muslims. And then the Emperor of Old Mali. The Emperor of Old Mali started when the chief of the Malinke people challenged the authority of the ruling Soninke family. The king Sundiata triumphed over Soninke people and established the Emperor of Old Mali. The story of Sundiata, also called as the Lion Prince, became one of the most famous epic from Africa, forming a rich literary tradition. And then, Emperor of Old Mali, considered as a well-developed empire and with more extensive agriculture than Kingdom of Ghana did. Then, Emperor of Old Mali was then succeeded by the Emperor of Songhai, which was founded by Soni Ali, a self-proclaimed Muslim, but many questioned his devotion to Islam, and it appears that he exploited the religion to centralize his own political power. The city of Timbuktu was a center of trade and culture in both Mali and Songhai empires. So, Timbuktu became an important trading and scholarly center in sub-Saharan Africa during the Mali and Songhai empires. It is located on the northern bed of the Niger River. In Timbuktu, there are many shops of craftsmen and merchants, especially of those who weave cotton and cloth. Timbuktu was an important trading hub for two of Africa's most important items of commerce, which I have said earlier, the salt and gold. But Timbuktu also became an important city for Islamic scholarship because its mosque contained a library and a university where scholars, theologians, and Muslim jurists studied. Thus, the most important trade in Timbuktu was in books. So next, the Roman Emperor had proclaimed Christianity as its state religion and taken control of the entire northern coast of Africa, including Egypt. Around 700 AD, Islam, the religion of Muhammad, was introduced into Africa as well as the Arabic writing system. So, towards the end of the Golden Age, Christianity and colonialism came into sub-Saharan Africa. This early Christian influence spread east to Actsum, eventually leading to the foundation of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, one of the largest religious groups in Ethiopia. So, Islam as well as the Arabic writing system was introduced into Africa. So Islam is the state religion of the old Mali, and other Eastern African nations were also largely Muslims. And European powers created colonized countries and established political control. So social and political chaos happened. And some of African nations were either split apart by European colonizers or joined with incompatible neighbors. Literature can also simply mean an artistic use of words for the sake of art alone. Traditionally, Africans do not radically separate art from teaching, rather than write or sing for beauty in itself. African writers, taking their cue from oral literature, use beauty to help communicate important truths and information to society. And examples of pre-colonial African literature are numerous. In Ethiopia, there is the Hebrew or Book of Kings, and one popular form of traditional African folklore is the trickster, a story in which a small animal uses its wits to survive encounters with larger creatures. And other works in written form are abundant, namely in Northern Africa, the Sahel regions in Western Africa, and on the Sawi coast. And in Timbuktu alone, there is an estimated 300,000 manuscripts from various library and private collections. Although many African cultures use writing system for record keeping and other practical purposes, African literature before the 20th century is primarily an oral tradition. One reason involves the tonal quality of many African languages, in which words change meaning depending on the tone in which they are spoken. For example, in a Bantu language spoken in Cameroon, one word can mean payment if spoken in a high tone, and crossroads if spoken in a low tone. Another reason the African literary tradition is largely oral is simply that the oral tradition has been strongly developed and vital in African cultures. Literary forms of African literature. Orature is the tradition of African oral literature which includes praise poems, love poems, tales, ritual dramas, and moral instructions in the form of proverbs and fables. It also includes epics, poems, and narratives. Orature is the oral equivalent of literature, the collection of traditional folk songs, stories, and the likes, that is communicated orally rather than in writing. Orature may be in prose or verse. The prose is often mythological or historical and can include the tales of the trickster character. Poetry often includes narrative epics, occupational verse, ritual verse, praise poems of rulers and other prominent people. Praise singers tell their story with music. Also recited, often sung, are love songs, work songs, children's songs, along with epigrams, proverbs, and riddles. African literature is in the form of brief quotations. Works are concentrated on describing economic, social systems, and presenting customs and systems of beliefs. Some of the themes of African literature are colonialism, liberation, nationalism, tradition, displacement, and ruthlessness. So next, griots. The keepers of oral literature in West Africa may be a professional storyteller, singer, or entertainer, and were skilled at creating and transmitting the many forms of African oral literature. Bards, storytellers, town criers, and oral historians also preserved and continued the oral tradition. A griot is an historian, storyteller, praise singer, poet, or musician. A griot is a repository of oral tradition and often seen as a leader due to his or her position as an advisor to royal personage. These keepers of oral literature can be thought of as living libraries. Today, griot may be a professional storyteller, a singer, or an entertainer, but in the past, griots had important roles in memorizing and transmitting their nation's histories, laws, and literature. Features of African oral literature: repetition and parallel structure served foremost as memory aids for griots and other storytellers. Repetition also creates rhythm, builds suspense, and adds emphasis to parts of the poem or narrative. Repeated lines or refrains often mark places where an audience can join in the oral performance. This method adds rhythm and balance to sentences, giving ideas a smoother flow and thus persuasiveness because of the repetition it employs. And it also helps the performer to easily remember and memorize the part of the literary piece. Also, for the viewers to allow them participate in the performance. Repeat and vary technique, in which lines or phrases are repeated with slight variations, sometimes by changing a single word. This technique repeats same words or phrases a few times to make an idea clearer and more memorable. It could be a word or phrase or a full sentence or a poetic line repeated to emphasize its significance in the entire text. So next, tonal assonance. The tones in which syllables are spoken determine the meanings of words like many Asian languages. Assonance takes place when two or more words close to one another repeat the same vowel sound but start with different consonant sounds. In Africa, Ijala recitation by hunter poets is one of the best known form of chanting. It is done in a regularly high-pitched voice in which tonal assonance and tonal contrast are employed with great relish. So next, call and response format includes spirited audience participation in which the leader calls out line or praise and the audience responds with an answering line or praise, becoming performers themselves. So this format started by the leader reciting or singing the first line or verse. Then the group responds and answer to the leader. They go back and forth like this throughout the performance. In sub-Saharan African culture, call and response is a pervasive pattern for democratic participation in public gatherings, in the discussion of civic affairs, in religious rituals, as well as in vocal and instrumental musical expression. Africa experienced several hardships in its long history which left an impact on the themes of its literature. Characteristics of African literature include slave narratives, protests against colonization, calls for independence, African pride, hope for the future, and dissent. That would be all. Thank you. Always remember to wash your hands, practice proper cough etiquette and proper hygiene, and to pray and spread the good news. Stay at home, keep safe, God bless. Thank you. Bye.
I tried to stop, but I can't stop.